just couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it when we read the report. What a day of absolute and total vindication for you. The floor is yours, sir.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Benny, one of the big questions that a lot of your audience has and a lot of Americans have is, what's next? What's next? One of the questions that has come up, and I watched your great reporting from Alligator Alley the other day there, Alcatraz Alley, right? Whatever you want to call it. The question that is going to continue to come up, and I've seen it, and I watch a lot of these interviews that Trump is on when he's out and about. People are asking about accountability. Okay. So we're going to get through the big, beautiful bill. And that's going to, once Hakeem Jeffries shuts up, there'll be a vote and we'll move the country forward with, securing our borders, getting the military up to speed where it needs to be, biggest tax cut in U.S. history. That's number one. And that's sort of one of the big issues. The economy was one of the things that Trump ran on, lowering gas prices. But the next bullet, and it is equal to this, is accountability. And actually Senator Grassley released some information the other day about Chinese, basically foreign interference, specifically Chinese interference in our elections. That was in the last couple of weeks here. That's another document that Grassley, who's been on this like a pit bull, which I appreciate him. That's another piece that, okay, if we know for a fact that there was foreign interference in our 2020 election, was Joe Biden legitimately elected? Let's put that aside and talk about this bombshell that was released by a forcing function called FISA, which is really, at this stage, there's so many people that I know, because I'm one of them, that are forcing the intelligence system and forcing the Department of Justice to release information. I mean, for those that follow my case very closely, I just filed another amendment to my DOJ lawsuit Monday night. And this Monday night, people can go look that up. And because it's an accumulative effect of everything that has happened to our country, for me personally, being at the sort of the number one target for the Obama regime, because I keep telling people that will listen that had I been able to stay in the White House, that there would have never been a Mueller investigation. Because, and in my book, in the book, Pardon of Innocence, in that book, I describe a meeting up in Trump Tower. Nobody's ever reported on this. Okay. And I talk about it in the book. And that's why I waited so long to come out with this book, because I knew once Trump won, I've been writing this thing since really last fall, but I really wanted to see what was going to happen with the election, because I'm not sure I would have come out with the book or not. I don't know. But I know once he won, because I made some additions into the book, because I wanted people to understand things that happened that nobody else was aware of. So, for example, in Trump Tower, after the election, prior to Trump taking over, there was a meeting with Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey, Mike from the National Security Agency.
NSA, yep.
From the NSA, we had Mike Pompeo was in there, myself, Reince Priebus, Vice President Pence, Mike Rogers, and then a couple of other assorted staff members in a meeting in Trump Tower where they briefed us on this bullshit. Okay, they briefed us on this, on this ICA. They briefed us on it. And in that meeting, I asked a very specific question. In fact, they had Mike Rogers was the lead briefer, and the room was set up where Clapper sat right next to Rogers. And I can picture this, and I describe it in detail in the book because it's a very important meeting. It's the one where Comey, after the end of the meeting, we were all dismissed, and Jim Comey stayed in the meeting by himself with Trump and told him about the salacious, hookers on the bed peeing on him kind of thing, which was again, total bullshit. So that meeting has never been talked about anywhere, and I talk about it in this book. And the reason why I talk about it, because during that meeting, I asked a very specific question to Mike Rogers while the president was being briefed, while Rogers is briefing the president on everything that you just talked about in the last segment here. And I asked the question because I know this in detail. I said, what was your confidence level of that information in that? And Mike said, which is one of the big agencies. He's leading one of the big intelligence community agencies, a national security agency. Mike said, our confidence level was it was low. And I'm like, so what is, then I went on to explain to Trump what that meant, right? And the others, of course, I could see Clapper, I could see Brennan, and they started doing, and they're going, well, Mr. President, the majority of the intelligence community's assessment is that blah, 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 that this actually was occurring, that it was high, right? Which was, again, it was pressure by three people, Comey, Brennan, and Clapper, on the entirety of the analytic team that was putting that thing together. And the analytic team, which comes out in this report that Miranda talked about, the analytic team said, hey, we don't believe this. We're not buying into this. So the pressure by three of the key leaders in the U.S. intelligence community and one of the leaders, of course, Comey in the law enforcement community, pressured them. Nope, doesn't make any difference what you believe. We're putting this in and we're going to run with it. That's where the left, then you get the Nancy Pelosi's of the world that go, okay, perfect. Hillary Clinton, the media, the cabal that they have, in their pockets. I mean, I talk about David Ignatius in this book, Washington Post, David Ignatius. He was part of what we call the kill shot, right? Clapper, after a couple of meetings, one meeting in the Oval Office with Obama, another meeting between me and Susan Rice. This is all January of 2017 timeframe. So now we have the players. I'm being one of the key ones. We've got the setup, the Oval Office on the 5th of January, the 6th of January, which is the meeting, which is the day that meeting occurred in Trump Tower. So 5 January, Barack Obama has all those guys inside of the White House in the Oval Office conspiring to get Flynn, then to get Trump. Okay, that was the essence of that meeting. Unbelievable. We have that in evidence. My case was dismissed because we were able to basically wrestle that kind of evidence out of the Department of Justice while I was going through the whole persecution. That's on the 5th of January, 2017. 6th January is the day that they had this famous meeting up in Trump Tower. Nobody reports on it. The 10th of January, I am then in a formal meeting with Susan Rice where we do kind of a formal handoff. That next day is when the Washington Post took the kill shot based on a direction from Jim Clapper. So the smear campaign started, right? Russia, Russia, Russia. I lay this out in detail. And it's one of these things where what we have to do as Americans, now this is to your audience, okay, and to the audience that matters across this country, because you have a large audience and a great audience and a smart audience because you make them smart and you tell them basically what is going on. But for the rest of this country, we are in a place now where we are in the middle of a war, Benny. This is not Democrats and Republicans, and I keep saying that every time I get an opportunity to speak to anybody. This is not about two political parties fighting each other. This is a war. This is a Marxist revolution inside of the United States of America that basically began with the likes of Barack Obama. And the plan was, and this will come out, this will eventually come out. The plan was 8 years of Barack Obama, 8 years of Hillary Clinton, and Benny Johnson. You wouldn't exist. I wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have the alternative media and the power of the alternative media. We wouldn't have the likes of guys like General Mike Flynn out there, beating the drum that's saying, hey, we're in the middle of a knife fight here, and our country is being taken over by Marxists. The national security, the greatest national security threat that we face right now is internal. It's not China. We can kick anybody's ass if this president, particularly this president, the president of the United States, says to the American people, hey, we have a threat from overseas. This is what we're going to do. Look at what our great military just demonstrated going over to, Iran and doing an unbelievable strike against nuclear targets, which we can talk about if you want. But the greatest threat that we face is right here at home, is the infiltration by foreign adversaries and aligning themselves with people who have bought into this anti-Americanism. And one of them, he's probably still talking on the House floor, and that's Hakeem Jeffries. More than likely, he's still probably talking, the slowest talker in Congress. I mean, so I could go on and on. I know. I'll stop, Benny.
We have an article about exactly what you're talking about here. The headline from Law and Crime. Michael Flynn was targeted by the FBI over posing a direct threat to the anti-Trump plot. You were targeted. I want to nail down this meeting. So was it in this meeting that you believe they decided that they were going to come after you? Was it in this meeting in Trump Tower that they said, no, this guy's sniffing us out. He's got our number and we gotta off him?
The 5th of January, 2017 was in the Oval Office. That was the meeting to conspire to get Flynn, to get Trump. We know that for a fact. And there's so much evidence that has come out on that. And I won't get into all that. A lot of it's been filed in cases that I have filed. So that's number one. That was the 5th of January. During that meeting is when they conspired, led by Obama. He's sitting at the Resolute desk, and he's got the whole national security team around him, led by him, where they conspired to basically move this thing to the next level. The next day, 6th January, that same group of people, roughly the same group, this time they added Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers wasn't in the very famous meeting in the 5th of January. Mike Rogers is a military general or military admiral, National Security Agency director. The next day, they bring up the whole team up to Trump Tower. I set that meeting up. So I'm the incoming already designated as a national security advisor. I'm the one that set that meeting up. It was a classified briefing. We set up a portion of Trump Tower as a skiff, did the whole thing. And that next day, now this is the day after the White House, so 6 January 2017, that same body of people plus Mike Rogers, and they had Mike Rogers as the face to do the presentation because he's a military guy and Trump loves military guys, right? So Mike Rogers is doing this briefing, which was choreographed with these guys prior to coming in there. And I asked a very specific question, and I'll state it again. I asked Mike Rogers, what is your confidence? What is your agency's confidence level in that information? Because I had already read the document, and I'm like, this is bullshit. This is like it's a piece of crap intel assessment, right? And here Clapper is saying the entire intelligence community, all 17 agencies, put their stamp of approval on this. Well, that was not the case.
On the dossier?
On the dossier. So
on the on the Russian dossier, the Russian disinfo dossier?
Mike said that his agency confidence level was basically low. And then I described to Trump, this is what that means. And then I kind of turned to the rest of them and I said, so what are we talking about here? So I left that meeting. And I was not worried one bit because I did not know about the 5 January, the day before meeting. We did not know about that meeting until I pulled it out of their rear ends during my case where we started to fight back. We finally pulled out what happened during that meeting the day before. So wouldn't
that be important evidence, General?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
Wouldn't you have wanted? I mean, listen, couldn't they have just come in and said, by the way, we were talking with the outgoing president.
You're thinking, and you're not a conventional thinker. And I don't mean to cut you off. You're not a conventional thinker at all. You're a guy who's really looking at these things critically. But this is the normal conventional thinking is that wouldn't they just do the right thing? These are not people that are going to do the right thing because these are anti-American, communists. Okay. And I'll just put it very bluntly. These are people who believe in a socialist America that doesn't have a constitution or the rule of law as we know it today. This is the direction that they want to take this country. When Donald J. Trump came down the very famous escalator and went and said, I'm going to run for president now because I see the country going to shit. And there's so many things that are wrong with what's happened in this country. And thank God he did, because nobody else could have beat Hillary Clinton. So Donald Trump wins. When he won, I'm telling you, it was like Katie barred the door to these people in the Obama regime. And what they did was they made very conscious decisions. When Trump appointed me as national security advisor, all hell broke loose. I know this because I have a lot. I mean, I still have great people who I know that are working inside of the government, that are working. I mean, I spent almost 34 years in the intelligence community. I ran one of the largest intel agencies in the world. I spent 5 years of my life in combat operations around the world, Benny. I didn't just, I don't forget the relationships and the people that I know and I love. They are still working hard inside, but they're not the ones that get to the top, because you only get to the top if you're a communist, okay? Especially under Obama. So this is what I want people to understand. The big picture here. Big picture is, you don't have to go buy Mike Flynn's book. You don't have to listen to what Mike Flynn says, but people need to understand. They need to understand that we are in the middle of a revolution in this country, and there's clear evidence that foreign adversaries interfered in the 2020 election, and probably others, but clear evidence that China, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, elements of those countries and people inside of our country interfered in the 2020 election, period. The evidence is so strong. And I think Tulsi Gabbard is going to be all over that. I am hopeful that Pam Bondi is all over this, but this has to happen. Now this revelation that just came out yesterday, and I'm actually going to be up with Miranda here in about another week or so, because there's a lot more that we have to bring out here because of what is happening to our country. Trump is going to do all that he can, and he's done an amazing amount when you think about just 6 months, right, of what he's done in 6 months. So, but it's historic where Trump is at. The mandate that he won by was, square away, get our economy back going again with all those things that I mentioned earlier. But it's accountability. He has got to crush the deep state. And I mean, crush it to where it cannot return, just like he just crushed the nuclear program of Iran. He's got to crush the deep state so it can't return for decades. He's got to do it.
So in your capacity as a military man, what should happen to these key players, Comer, Clapper, and Brennan? Because now, according not to your book, not to me, not to blogs, right, or to tweets, but according to the director of the CIA and a phalanx of analysts who've been tasked and worked on this for months, and also the John Durham report, if you want to use that as an appendix to this, according to all of the available evidence, they lied to Trump's face. They actively usurped presidential power. They committed treason, General. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So in March of 2020, I'm sorry, let me get the date right. March of 2017, this is very important. I talk about this. March of 2017 I'm out of the White House. So Trump let me go because, it was whatever. I mean, I described that in detail too. I mean, Mike Pence, I go after Mike Pence in the book quite a bit, actually, because Mike Pence, to me, is talk about a traitorous or disloyalty, at least disloyalty. But in March of 2017, there was a briefing to I think it's the gang, what they call the Gang of Eight, and in that briefing, this is from Devin Nunes. I talk a little bit about this. So remember when Devin Nunes went over to the White House and talked to President Trump, and then he came out of the White House and he was like berated by the media, and Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House at the time, then suspended Devin Nunes from being the chair of the intel community for like 8 months. It was like a long time. People tend to forget that. So Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, Republican, suspends Republican Devin Nunes, as the chair of the intel committee in the House, because he went over to the White House in March and told the president, hey, we just got briefed. The Gang of Eight just got briefed. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. This is even before Mueller was even appointed. This is before Mueller's appointed. So what they began to do is and this is when they run after Devin Nunes. So the Nancy Pelosi smear campaign, the tactics of this, the entire intel community's leadership. Now Trump is in, but Trump doesn't really know yet. He doesn't know the way of the world of Washington, D.C. at that time. Now he does. So that's another piece of evidence that we all now know, but we knew then too. And so Paul
Ryan, you're saying Paul Ryan and Mike Pence at least were in on this?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. Paul Ryan and Mike Pence wanted Trump out during the very famous, prior to the election in 2016, the pussy tapes. Okay, I'll say it like that. Sorry, but that infamous tapes came out. I know at that time that there was discussions between Reince Priebus and Mike Pence about, well, if Trump steps down, then we're going to have a plan, and we're going to, because they were hopeful, because that tape didn't come out through Democrat operatives. Okay. So there was a plan for, hopefully Trump's going to step down and go, screw this. You guys can have it. Those guys were ready to step right in. Okay. This is 2016. So all the people out there that think, all these guys are great because they're Republicans, sorry, they're not. This is where the uniparty steps in. And the uniparty is one of these big problems that we face in this country because they don't want to accept that we are in the midst of a revolution, and a Marxist takeover. And Barack Obama, there's no reason in the world why Barack Obama should have ever won the first time around, but he did because there was a push by a lot of people because they knew this was the opportunity that they had to start this turnover of our country. Okay. 8 years of Barack, 8 years of Hillary, we'd be done. So now here's where we are at today on your show, here in America with this, bill that's about to happen. And Trump has got a lot of authority, right? A lot of leadership authority that he's been given by the judgment of the American people, by the majority of the American people, the way our country is supposed to be run. And in that judgment, he's going to have to make a decision. And this is kind of where I keep saying enough is enough. He's going to have to make a decision about how and who to hold accountable.
Yes. And
he's going to have to turn. I want people to remember that the chief law enforcement officer in the country is not the attorney general. It's not the attorney general. The chief law enforcement in the country is the president of the United States. We always say, he's the president and he's the commander in chief. He's also the chief law enforcement officer in the country. He's the only one with pardon authority at that level, right? And he can declare things based on national security and national emergency issues alone. So he can decide which direction the country goes, and he does it because the majority of the judgment of the American people were imbued into his ability to be able to do that. That's where we are. So Trump is going to have to sit there with his team, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, sort of his national security team, and probably pull in a few others and sit there and go, okay, what do we do here, folks? Because we can't have reports like this come out and nothing happen, right? John Brennan, I'll tell you what. So one thing, and I called for it yesterday. Pam Bondi should immediately, and she should tell the American people, she should immediately put John Brennan, Jim Clapper, and Jim Comey under investigation as a minimum. Put them under and tell the American people the Department of Justice has made the decision, and we have coordinated with the White House. Okay, the President of the United States is aware, and he has given us the authority to go ahead and do this, to put these gentlemen under investigation, and to tell them, just like I was told or Trump was told, save all your text messages, save all of your emails, save all of your phone conversations, because we're going to go pull it all up. And guess what we're also going to do? We're going to do some things in the classified side. We're going to use the national security apparatus that we do have in the Department of Justice, and we are going, because they just appointed a new national security division czar in the Department of Justice. We're going to pull all the classified texts. Okay, we're going to pull it all. We're going to look into every bit of it, because believe me, they did a lot of stuff on what's called, the classified work environment, CWE or JWICS, right? Joint Worldwide Intelligence Command and Control System. These are highly classified systems where a lot of the communications was had. All right, and also any communications you had with the president, and because Steve Bannon, right? Steve Bannon and Pete Navarro went to jail. They went to prison because of the protection of executive privilege. They went to jail over it. All right. So you don't want to say what Barack Obama directed you to do? Then we're going to hold you in contempt, and you're going to go to prison. Believe me. And I've said this in the past, and I don't know whether I said it on your show. The very first guy that, if I was the Attorney General, I would immediately go bring in Jim Clapper. I'd go get Jim Clapper, and I'd bring him in. And guess what? For national security purposes, you don't even need to bring a lawyer. Don't have to have a lawyer. Ask a lot of the J6ers, okay? And you bring him in, and I can guarantee on the way from his house to wherever you're going to question him, and make it a long ride, right? Make it a long ride. I guarantee Jim Clapper will start spilling his guts, because Jim Clapper knows that he's screwed. And he can't play I got partial dementia like Uncle Joe did because I'm old. No. I'm sorry, buddy. Do it to Jim Comey. Do it to John Brennan. Do it to some of the others that are around this whole thing, Benny. This is so bad This is so bad. So now we're going to get this bill. The government's going to move forward. Trump is going to, he's going to drive this summer, drive the gas prices down this summer. He's going to do all these, he's going to continue to do great things. But I'm telling you, because now you're talking to the guy that could have just, fallen over. Okay. And I did not. And what I did was at a certain point in time, and I did this with my family, and we said, enough is enough. We are going to fight back, because I saw the writing on the wall of how bad they were going to treat me, how bad they treated members of my family, and how bad the rest of my larger family. I have a large family of people. My whole family was being abused. My mother-in-law, she got people coming to their house, knocking on their doors. It's such bullshit, right? I spent almost 34 years in the military, 5 of those years in direct combat operations, never got a parking ticket, right? They couldn't find an unpaid parking ticket from Mike Flynn. So I started to fight back. Well, so that was back in 2018, right? 7 years ago. And then into 2019. Then my case gets dismissed, right? So I'm telling you right now, and I can tell your audience, and I'll tell the president of the United States, because he knows this. I speak to him enough about things, and I'm just telling you that I'm not about to give up. I am not going to give up. And this is one of those areas where our country is at risk. And I did not serve our country the way I served our country to just roll over. I am not rolling over.
General, what happened to you was supposed to be a warning shot to anybody with your level of credentials, to warning them against working for President Trump. They were trying to make an example of you.
Yep.
And they damn near succeeded. They wanted to put you in prison. They wanted to put your children in prison. They wanted to destroy your life. They wanted to prove that they could end you. You are still standing. So what would be your advice to the president as to how to end them? Meaning, how do you prevent another rat's nest of communists from rising up within the intel ranks and attempting to usurp the will of the American people and to commit treasonous acts against our duly elected executive? What would be your recommendation? What would you like to see as the end result? So you just said investigate them. Okay, fine, good. What would you like to see as the end result of that investigation?
Yeah, I think that a complete overhaul of the United States intelligence community, number one, because the deep state is a large apparatus. The CIA has always been running our country more than people want to believe. A lot of people have spoken about it, but a complete, and I mean a complete overhaul of the United States intelligence community, and that has to happen in a very quick time frame. So, you have a group of people, and some of them are there now, but they're not the right people right now. And I'm not talking about. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tulsi. Tulsi's doing some great things, but I'm talking about a group of wise men and women that do look at this thing and don't go a year from now and issue a report. No, I'm talking about a complete overhaul. You know that the intel community has as large a budget as the Defense Department? Well, most people don't know that. U.S. intelligence community has a budget that's the size of the Defense Department's budget. So, a complete overhaul. That has to happen with strong recommendations in like 90 days, and then you begin the process. Then you begin the process of cutting and sending people home and shutting doors down, shutting buildings down, shutting agencies down, shutting activities down. Large consolidation. And that's not going to affect our national security. Believe me, there are so many capabilities that we have in this country that are doing very effective work at the state and local level for our own homeland and the protection of our own homeland, and some of the things that are happening over in the Defense Department. So that's one. The other component of this is to look at what are the authorities that the President of the United States has. Like the President has what's called Title 50 authorities, right? So the President needs to get a full presentation on all of his national security and national emergency authorities. He needs to get that right now. And I mean, like guys like Stephen Miller could, he's got such a big brain. He could put all this kind of stuff together, but the President needs to get that now to say, okay, what are my authorities? What are the authorities that I have as the President of the United States to make decisions, to do stuff? Like Trump used to say during the first administration, I could do more. I could do more. When the Mueller investigation was going on, I could shut it down, but he never did, because I don't think he really truly understood then, because he wasn't savvy to the ways of Washington, D.C. as the 45th president. Now, after going through the fake Biden administration and Trump historically won again, this man is ready to go to war. And I think that's what he needs to do. And he's going to have to understand what those authorities are, Benny. And then once he does, then he'll realize, okay, so I can do X, Y, and Z. Which of those do I do? And believe me, when he does them, it will unleash the ideals of what America is supposed to be about. And that's our rule of law.
But these three men, Brennan, Clapper, and Comey, these three men are the archetypes. They're the figureheads of this revolution against the American people. What should happen to them?
Right. So they should immediately be put under investigation immediately. And actually, there can be decisions by the president and with the authorities that he has to bring them in now, like to bring them in under question and question them. And frankly, there's a lot of authorities that he has to be able to do that for solely national security purposes. Now, let me make a statement here too about those three, Benny. Those three are soldiers. Okay. They're not commanders. Okay. Those three are soldiers. They were doing the bidding of those that are leading this effort to overthrow this country. Okay. Barack Obama is one of the subordinate leaders of that cabal. But there's others, right? When we've talked about the globalist crowd out there and these people that believe in the idea that we need to go, we need to leave the idea of sovereignty and a sovereign nation, and we need to join the globalist world, right? There's a lot of, and there's people out in Silicon Valley. There's people in Europe that believe this, and there's people right here in the United States, right in our own Congress. So those are the leaders. These three that we mentioned, those are soldiers. That's why I say you bring those soldiers in, you begin to question them. Believe me, they're not going to want to go to prison. And if they go to prison, which they should anyway, they're going to tell, their stories will be revealing, because like I said about Jim Clapper, I wasn't kidding. I'm not kidding about Jim Clapper. I think Jim Clapper doesn't want to go to prison. And he's almost, whatever, he might be 80 years old right now, 81 years old. He doesn't want to go to prison for the rest of his life. And he will. He will. If he's questioned under oath, without all of the bells and whistles, I'm not talking about by Jim Jordan and the House, the House the Judicial Committee there, Judicial Affairs Committee. I mean, these guys do nothing. They do nothing. The judiciary.
You have a high confidence level that Clapper, Comey, and Brennan will all go to prison if this investigation is
I do.
brought.
I absolutely do, because what they'll learn is they're going to learn that there was a conspiracy to undermine. It's clear. It's clear. There's a conspiracy to undermine the presidency of the United States of America and, of course, President Donald J. Trump. And to do that, they had to take a whole series of actions. And frankly, Hillary Clinton's part of this. Now, people are going to go, statute of limitations. Hey, let's take a hard look at what is best for this country. Because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm a lawyer. I ought to be one. But I'm just telling you that these three, and there are others, these three are at the heart of this conspiracy.
There's no statute of limitations for treason, right? Do you believe that this could end in a military tribunal? I mean, this is the highest possible national security clearance.
Trump said something the other day, and I'll pick on this for a little bit. Okay, this is about, because people are asking him, and I don't know who asked him the question about accountability of Mayorkas when he was down at Alcatraz there, right? Mm-hmm. Alligator Alcatraz. Somebody asked him about Mayorkas. Should Mayorkas be, indicted, I think, or something like that. And Trump said that, well, it wasn't he pardoned, these 8,000 pardons, they pardoned the J6 unselect committee because they destroyed all the evidence. And Trump asked somebody off to the side about, let's look into that. Let's look into that, And then Trump said something that's it's not troubling, but I want him to understand it, because he said that, well, maybe he was just following somebody's orders. Okay. Well, because you mentioned Nuremberg. Well, the generals of the German army that were just following orders hung or were put in prison. Okay. So if you're just following orders, that does not relieve you of the fact that you committed egregious crimes against somebody, right? And in this case, in Mayorkas' case, he intentionally kept our borders open. But if he was just following orders, that doesn't let him off the hook. Get him in, investigate him, ask him questions. Say, who gave you the orders? And if it's Uncle Joe or Barack Obama or some other cabal of people, you can't get off, Benny, because you were following orders. If you committed crimes, doesn't give you the benefit. That's what happened during World War II. After World War II, the Nuremberg trials. So maybe that's what we do have. Maybe, I know a lot of people online go, Nuremberg trials. Well, maybe there is something like that, right? Maybe there is I hate to throw it to Congress, because Congress will do nothing. This is where I think Donald Trump, and I'll shut up after this. The President of the United States is the only person that takes this oath of office. And one of the words that is different than all others who take the oath of office is the word preserve. President of the United States, when he takes the oath of office, puts his hand on the Bible, he uses the word preserve. And what that means is that the President of the United States has the sole responsibility given to him by the people of the United States of America, because of the constitutional system of government that we have, to preserve the Constitution of the United States of America. And then he says, protect and defend. He's the only one that says preserve. If we are going to preserve the beauty, the magic of our Constitution of the United States of America, the person to do it, who I believe was ordained by God Almighty because he survived a shot to his head, an assassin's bullet to his head. And I believe this. I'm speaking for myself. I don't wear my religiosity on my sleeve, but I believe that this is the man that was ordained to do this. If he doesn't do it, I don't know who else will do it in the times to come. He's got the mandate. He's got the authority. He's got the leadership. He has the strength, the conviction, and I do believe that he's got the mental discipline to basically do what needs to be done and push the noise aside, because we are in a period now where we cannot lose momentum. Trump can't lose momentum, and one of the ways that he gains momentum, once this bill gets signed, which it will, and he'll put his stamp of approval on it. Once that happens, now it's going after all of these crimes that were committed against our country. We can talk about against Mike Flynn, against Donald Trump, against, name the name, right? Roger Stone, all of those that were hurt by these. I got that. But this is now about preserving the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's his responsibility. That's his duty. And that's what I would recommend to Donald J. Trump.
We'll clip it and we'll put it out there and we'll tag the president and we'll say, Mr. President, the best advice from one of the best men currently standing today in this nation, the great General Michael Flynn. Here's where you can find Pardon of Innocence, the General's book. I have about 1,000 follow-up questions for you, General, but it'll have to wait till next time. I know that you've got to go. You should also follow the good General here on X. Over 2 million patriots already do. General Mike Flynn. Thank you so very much. Godspeed.
God bless you, Benny. Thank you so much.
Godspeed.